As industries evolve and strive to do more with less, count on Ecolab to help you optimize, protect, and delight. With optimized operations, we help improve efficiencies and deliver consistent results. We help protect reputations, proactively working to safeguard your brand and alleviate customer concerns. Cleaner and safer environments lead to delighted guests, customers, residents, students, and staff. Ecolab is here to help power your performance so you can deliver for your customers, providing a safe, healthy, and unbeatable experience.
Hello and welcome to ACF Chefs Forum. We appreciate all of you tuning in today for this webinar and hope you are ready to learn more about top critical health code violations and how to best mitigate them. Now, more than ever, it's important for culinarians to connect, to share, and to offer inspiration and mentorship, which is exactly why we're excited to have an expert here with information just for you, the leaders of the food service industry. Thanks again to Ecolab for bringing us today's learning opportunity. Before we begin, as a note, we will be answering questions as soon as possible following the presentation. Please use the chat function to collaborate with other viewers and the Q&A function anytime during the session to pose your questions to today's speaker. So let's get that conversation going in the chat. If you haven't already, please let us know where you're tuning in from today. I'm Jackie Pressinger, American Culinary Federation's Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I have to say we are thrilled to have an industry expert with us today from Ecolab. Clint Sowle is Principal Technical Account Specialist working on Ecolab Corporate Accounts Technical Services team, and he has 9 years experience at Ecolab, holding a variety of positions, including roles with Ecolab Corporate Sustainability and Pest Elimination. I know there's a lot to cover today on this important topic, so at this time, I'll pass the presentation over to our special guest. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So Jackie absolutely nailed it. The most difficult part of any presentation I give is giving out my title and who I work for. So yes, I am. My name is Clint Sowle. I am a Principal Technical Account Specialist with our Corporate Account Technical Services team. So an absolute mouthful, but I'm excited to talk to you today about top critical health code violations and how to mitigate them. Jackie was able to read a little bit about me, but I've been with Ecolab for it's going on almost 10 years now. With our sustainability team and in pest elimination. I currently work in our institutional space, so mostly focused on food service, but also a little bit of long-term care and hospitality as well. And I provide technical resources to our customers and to our sales team as well. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And hopefully in this presentation today, if we can walk out with you all knowing these 4 things, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. So we're going to discuss the importance of food safety and public health, which I think is on top of everybody's mind. We're going to describe the top most common health violations. We're going to then explain the top contributing risk factors and really how those align almost seamlessly with those top 5 common health department violations. And then identifying those risk factors, we're going to find ways to mitigate them. So if we get all of that out of this presentation today, we'll be in pretty good shape. So like Jackie said, I think we'll hold questions till the end, put them in the chat, and then I think they'll kind of feed them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go at the end. So yeah, we'll get started. So overview, high level, let's look at food service. So 70% of foodborne outbreaks occur in food service. So obviously 70%, huge number, something we'd all expect. And 74% of those outbreaks are cross-contamination focused. So as we'll see with the violations and mitigating risks today, cross-contamination plays in all of the spaces we see in those top violations. It all will make sense, but obviously there's a lot of ways we can help reduce those outbreaks, and we'll talk about that as well. 80% of those outbreaks are related to food prep. So the way I look at it is how food is handled, how it's stored, the temperature, how it's labeled, and then what you do with it once you're preparing it. All of that kind of works with cross-contamination, and obviously that's going to lead to major outbreaks. And we know, salmonella, there's 1 million cases of salmonella each year in the United States. So incredibly preventable, and we're going to talk about ways to do that today. And one little final blurb, 46% of consumers say their level of concern about food safety has increased, and that's obviously continuing to drive forward as we look into, post-pandemic and things like that. I think that's still going to remain very high on people's minds as they go into, public spaces. Now let's look at the health department industry overall and then their trends. So I think what we obviously expect and what we've seen is, all of our market segments that Ecolab works with took significant dips in violation volume in 2020 and even the beginning of 2021 during the pandemic. And that can be obviously for a variety of pretty obvious reasons. You look at inspectors, they stopped inspecting altogether. Some of them were the very, vital virtual inspections that I'm sure got a lot out of those. And then, many health departments, they lost inspectors, whether to budget restrictions during the pandemic, or a lot of people retired right during the pandemic. So those factors really, decreased the amount of violations we saw. And then just volume of restaurants being open, right? That's another big one. If you look since 2020, what we've seen is those violations have now continued that spiking back towards the norm since 2020. And that's obviously to do with health departments returning to quote unquote normal, or at least as normal as we're going to get. And then, labor issues are a big factor. And I know probably every single person on this call has dealt with or is dealing with labor issues. And because we have a lack of trained, skilled labor currently in our industry, what we're going to see is more violations as people who are unskilled, who are untrained, work in our industry. So all of those are kind of spiking those increases, and it's good and it's bad. But I think what's interesting to note is all these top opportunities, these critical health violations, all of these are really very similar to what we saw pre-pandemic as well. So everything we're seeing, as we go 2023 and beyond, is stuff we saw in 2019, 2018 too. So it's all stuff that we can all do better on. And then I think, as we go forward, we'll see it's not overly complicated, but it's stuff we have to be diligent about. So here they are, right? Here's the top 5 critical violations for full service restaurants nationally. So if we look at the right here, the first one with a bullet, 23.5%, that's cleaning and sanitizing, right? And food surface violations are food contact surface violations are the most cited. And these are 17% of the total critical violations. We're going to go through in depth the process of food contact surfaces, the why, products to use, all that sort of stuff. But just note that this one is incredibly preventable. And I guarantee you, almost every restaurant I go into today, especially when you look at something like cleaning our tables, right? Cleaning and sanitizing tables, it's just not being done properly. And that's where you're getting almost a quarter of the violations being for this. Temp management, another one that's incredibly tricky. We won't touch super in depth. I know you all probably know temperature management, how critical it can be. But the real thing here is its complexity, right? From receiving all the way through to, holding, reheating, and then serving, right? There's a lot of hot and colds that go in between. And colds obviously dominate the temperature issues we're seeing, 17% to almost 5%. But, it's something that we have to be on top of mind. Hand hygiene, hopefully this one will resonate with everybody. During the pandemic, I think hand washing really, was red alert for a lot of people, or increased awareness. We're starting to see that wane a little bit. And as we do, it's still the number 3 most cited health violation. It's at, over 20% as well. And that comes from everything from not knowing how to properly wash your hands, which we'll see is pretty extreme. And then the adequate, sinks and properly having, dispensers full of soap ready to go for you. So that's a big over 20%. Again, very similar to temperature here, labeling and rotation. This is really about training, management practices, and knowing where your flaws are within your own processes. And we'll just briefly touch on that. And then finally, kind of summing up all of these is knowledge and training, right? I mentioned earlier all these labor challenges everyone's having, but having a person in charge who knows how to perform duties, who knows how to train people, people knowing what to do, that's going to cut down on all of these. But the fact that they don't exist today, that can be, up to 6% of the violations we're seeing. So that's a snapshot of what we're seeing in 2023 year to date. And then if you look at this, these are obviously correlated directly with the foodborne illnesses we're seeing. So if you look at the lovely graph on the right, what you'll see is, 2010 to 2019, we see this upward trend, with 2018 being, a very extreme case of illnesses. Now, this is illnesses U.S. foodborne outbreaks for every industry. So obviously 2020, you see this huge cut, basically way down, a third or even a quarter of what we were seeing in 2019 for obvious reasons. But then in 2021, even with, a lot of the nation slowly getting out of that COVID, world, you're still seeing almost a doubling of what we saw in 2020. So we're going back to what we saw before. And if you pivot to the restaurant data, this is where it's really interesting compared to the entirety of the US. 2019, you're looking at 5,200, almost 5,300 illnesses, 319 hospitalizations, and 1 death. Now you pivot that to 2020, and what's really interesting is you've cut in half the amount of illnesses, but you've kept the exact same amount of hospitalizations, and you've actually doubled the amount of deaths. And then 2021, this is, really interesting. You've actually lowered even further the illnesses. You've cut in, 2/3 the hospitalizations, but you're actually seeing 3 deaths. So deaths have stayed kind of low, which is great, but we've actually interestingly seen, stuff fall in 2021 in restaurants, and that's a credit to all of you and kind of the changes we had to make during COVID. But also, back up, so we have to keep mindful of all that. And finally, there at the bottom, neuro and salmonella are the big two, right? Stuff we fight all the time, and Ecolab is on the challenge with these two and many others. So that's kind of a snapshot of the foodborne illness piece. Now we're going to transfer over to the top contributing risk factors. So if you look at these and you look at what we showed with the top food safety violations, they're almost mirror image of each other, right? You've got temperature management, poor personal hygiene, cross-contamination, and unsafe sources. So we talked about cross-contamination as one of the first slides I showed off. 74%, right? Cross-contamination is the reason why food outbreaks occur. Cross-contamination is the CDC's one of their third most contributing risk factor, right? Temperature management, again, that's number 2 on the top food code violations. Poor hygiene is number 3 on there. And so when you look at this breakdown, right, you're looking at 89, 80ish%, right, of what we're looking at directly correlates to the top food service violations. So the CDC and health departments are really aligned on what they're seeing as the problem and what the problems can occur, and you get those illnesses and things like that. And obviously, we at Ecolab, we're all about safety, and we're all about taking care of you and taking care of your guests. So those health risks, people getting sick, people having to go to the hospital, and people dying, those are what we care about, and we're going to focus to prevent that happening. But there's obviously a business side of all of this, right? And we want to be cognizant of that too. So it's estimated by the National Restaurant Association that a food establishment, one establishment getting an outbreak can cost $75K, and that's just not upfront, where you're talking about having to throw certain things away, having to deep clean the facility, having to be closed for a certain amount of time. We're also talking about the back end too, right? Social media and word of mouth, and just absolutely hammering your facility because, hey, I got sick here, never go here again. So there's an obvious human risk associated with these things that were really important, but we have to be mindful that there's also a massive financial risk associated with this as well. So it's ultra critical that we try to keep these top critical violations and these risks and keep them mitigated. So with that in mind, we'll start pivoting now to mitigation and how we do it and what we think about so that we can prevent those critical violations and really keep your restaurant safe and operating properly. So to do that right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the most basic of basics, right? And we talked in the very beginning, top foods, the top violations, the number one, which almost 25% was cleaning and sanitizing food contact surfaces. So when I mean basic, we're going to what's the difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. So cleaning truly means you are cleaning the surface to make it look clean. Any dirt, any soils that you can see with the naked eye, Cleaning means you're removing those from the surface. It basically, all that's doing is any of the microbes that are on that soil go with that soil. Any of the microbes that remain on the surface stay with that surface. So it's not actually sanitizing or disinfecting, and it's not, doing anything to those microbes other than the ones that were remaining on the soil are going with it. And when I talked about earlier about how we really see that in, restaurant tables, what do we see all the time, right? Oh, if it's busy, it's a lunch rush or it's a dinner rush. Oh, I'm just going to spray my table down and then I'm going to wipe it off. All you've done there is clean, right? You haven't sanitized or disinfected. That's a food code. That's a violation. And here we are, right? So we'll go into sanitizing. That's simply reducing the number of bacteria in an environment significantly. So by spraying that on and letting that have its contact time, you're reducing the amount of bacteria on a surface. And then disinfecting, this is obviously the one where it's going that extra step further. It's actually destroying or irreversibly inactivating bacteria and viruses on a surface. So that's the big difference between the three. And obviously, knowing that difference is really important as we talk about these next few slides. So when you're doing proper cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, these are the steps you need to follow. And there's actually one more that I'll kind of mention for sanitizing. So first, you're pre-cleaning. And I mentioned it today, right? Think of your restaurants. What are we doing? We're spraying on surface. We're wiping it clean instantly. That's pre-cleaning. So that's just step one. And that's what 25% of the violations, that's where we're getting hit, right? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to disinfect. So you're going to pre-clean first. Then you're going to take either a disinfectant or a sanitizer, and you're going to spray the surface that you want to disinfect or sanitize. Then this is the biggest one of all, is waiting. Now, I know this is one of the most challenging ones for everybody, right? We're all busy. We got to move and groove. But this is the one where the EPA actually registers our products. So Ecolab's products, every product that is a sanitizer or disinfectant, it's going to have different claims, and they all are based on timing. So there are some out there that'll the surface has to remain wet for 10 minutes. And there's some out there that the surface has to remain wet for 15 seconds. So it's really important to know what you're spraying on your surface. And it's really important to know that timing so that you get that good sanitizing or disinfecting. And then you're going to wipe it dry. So this is really the disinfectant, route. One thing I did want to mention is if you are sanitizing a food contact surface, there's kind of one extra step, and there's a rinse step obviously in there. So you're going to clean, rinse, and then sanitize. Now, we do have a cleaner secret surface, cleaner sanitizer that actually you can use as both a cleaner and a sanitizer and not have that rinse step. So that is an option as well. But for most sanitizers in your red bucket, your quat sanitizer that you're using your 3-comp sink, that you're also using on food contact surfaces, there's a rinse step required in there as well. So just a thought that it can be a lot more complex than just spraying and going. And then this is obviously important too, right? We want to look at determining the frequency of cleaning and disinfecting and sanitizing. So I'm sure all of you today have standard operating procedures around standard frequency. So how frequently you should be cleaning X surface, and that should be maintained on a regular basis, right? But then you really got to think about 3 other things that we really want to focus on to increase the amount of cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting you're doing. And I always like to bring up, if you think of your restaurant, right, let's look at, the front doors. So soil load, we don't know what's coming through those front doors. We have no idea, but it's going to be the highest soil load because whatever some customers bringing in from the outside, they're bringing in, right? Foot traffic, well, that's the spot where they come through the doors. Every single customer that comes in, they're going through that location. So it's very high foot traffic. And then infection risk, we don't know what they're bringing in with them. So, and they're all, especially if it's busy and everybody's waiting by the front or something like that, everybody's mingling together, that infection risk gets higher and higher. So in a place where there's high foot traffic, high soil load, higher infection risk, that's where you're going to be wanting to cleaning and disinfecting much more frequently, right, than an unused part of the restaurant or an unused area or whatever it may be, right? Because those are where people are going to congregate and those are where people are going to touch stuff. Other things to consider, we kind of talked to them before, but the product type, right? So you really want something that's going to disinfect or sanitize very quickly. You want something that is also going to work on multiple surfaces. So whether it be metal, whether it be plastic or wood or vinyl or whatever you're using, you want to make sure that that product isn't going to damage that surface. And then you also got to think about the soil type, right? We in the Ecolab space, we deal with hospital disinfection and we deal with restaurant disinfection. And the type of soil that you're going to get in a hospital versus a restaurant, hopefully, are significantly different from one another. So these are all things to consider about with frequency and product choices, everything in between. And finally, to make it super easy, right? Food contact sanitizers and hard surface disinfectants. I've been kind of using them, interchanging how to use them because they can be used kind of similarly, but where do we use them and why do we use them? So simply put, food contact sanitizers, we're going to use where food can be in contact with it. I know it's super rocket science, but simple as that. If food's going to touch it, we're going to use it, a food contact sanitizer. Hard surface disinfectants, we're going to try to use everywhere else. Restrooms, public spaces, door handles, mirrors and glass, wherever you can think, we want to disinfect where people are going to touch. I mean, you get the picture there, elevator buttons, whatever it may be, that's where we want to use a disinfectant. Now, I get this question a lot, so I always try to answer it this way. People ask me, are restaurant tables considered food contact food contact surfaces? And there's really two answers to this. Answer one is there is no governmental agency that will give you direct verbiage on if that is true or not. So there's no governmental agency that's going to tell you, yes, it's a food contact surface, and you should use a sanitizer, or yes, it's a disinfectant and you should use a disinfectant. So it's kind of nebulous. We at Ecolab consider them food contact surfaces. And the reason is, if you think of a family of four sitting down at a restaurant table, the little kid's going to spill food onto the table, or heck, even an adult is going to spill food on the table, and they're expecting that table is clean and sanitized. So they're going to pick up that food, put it back on their plate and eat it. Because they're going to eat it, food has touched that. To us, that's a food contact surface, and we want to sanitize it. Now, why do we have the two different? Why do we have a sanitizer? Why do we have a disinfectant? Simply put, two reasons. Food contact sanitizers are generally considered safer than disinfectants. Food contact sanitizers, if you were to ingest one of them, it's not going to be as harmful to you as a disinfectant, which a disinfectant, it's designed to kill. That's what it's supposed to do. Sanitizers are designed to reduce the amount. So it's generally considered safer if you were to accidentally ingest it, if some residual is left on a table. Number two, hard surface disinfectants, they're broad range pathogens. When we design them at Ecolab, our goal is to kill as much stuff as we can with them, right? And as quickly as possible, because we want to kill as much as we can, as quick as we can. When we do our food contact sanitizers, our goal there is to target pathogens related to the foodborne illness. So we're targeting salmonella, we're targeting noro, we're targeting things that really are going to be impacted in the food space. And so that's why we use food contact sanitizers for them. It's not that some disinfectants don't do, both, but for safety reasons and for direct targeting reasons, that's why we use sanitizers over hard surface disinfection. So that's the difference. That's the frequency. That's the proper way to use them. That's the difference between them. So hopefully that will help mitigate that, number one with a bullet, 25% top violation of food contact sanitizer surfaces. So one of the next big ones, personal hygiene for the mitigating risk factor. Hand washing for the top violation is, why aren't employees getting their hands clean? And this is really, it's an interesting question. We really saw a huge swap during the pandemic where people got really, really aware. And then they started to relax. And then a new strain of COVID, and we get really aware again, and then we'd start to relax. So we saw that kind of ebb and flow of hand washing. But really, why aren't employees getting their hands clean? Well, it's down to either lack of awareness or lack of training. So we'll talk about training in a bit, but people don't realize how important hand washing is, right? It's washing without soap and equipment failure. Those go hand in hand, right? Hey, I don't want to, I'm washing my hands just to, with water, just to kind of, I don't know why, but just to kind of show that I'm doing it, but I'm not really doing anything. Or, hey, the dispenser doesn't work. It doesn't have soap in it. So I can't wash them. And then there's the ick factor of the dispenser looking terrible and messy, so people don't want to use it. And if you kind of bundle all of that up, what you see is 80% of infections are transmitted by hands. So if we go back to the very beginning, and foodborne outbreaks are 70% in food service. Well, 80% of them are somehow from hands, and people don't wash their hands properly. 95% of people don't do that. And some germs can live on our surfaces of our hands for 3 days. So now you're looking at, when we talked about cross-contamination being a huge issue, well, here we are, right? 80% of infections on hands, 95% are washing their hands correctly. And if I leave you with nothing else, I leave you with this slide. We touch 300 surfaces every 30 minutes. So as we go about our daily life, moving through an environment, we're touching a light switch, we're touching ourselves, our hands, our hair, we're touching a water bottle, we're touching tabletop surfaces, mouse and keyboard, whatever it may be. So if 95% of the people coming into our restaurant, whether it be employees or patrons, aren't washing their hands properly, and 80% of the outbreaks are spread via poor hygiene, and we're touching 300 surfaces, it is an absolute recipe for disaster. So when you look at what we just talked about with cleaning and sanitizing surfaces, why it's so important is you have to assume people coming into your restaurant haven't washed their hands properly, and they could be bringing who knows what in from the outside. So we better be sanitizing and disinfecting as much as possible. And this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because like I said, we have visitors that we have a limited control over, right? We want to make sure they have access to hand sanitizer stations. They have visibility to hand washing, and they have the ability to be drawn to stuff to get their hands clean, because we can't control what they do outside, and we really can't control what they do inside. But our goal is to kind of steer them one way or another. But for our associates, right, we really want to try to focus on them, because they're the ones that are going to be preparing food. They're the ones that could do the cross-contamination. And for a variety of reasons, right? Employees who are regularly washing their hands, they're less likely to get sick and miss work. I said before, but we've had recent studies where COVID really spiked people to care a lot about hand washing. And then as people started to get a little bit tired of it, they started to dip down. And then we'd see a surge during another, wave, and back and forth. So we saw that ebb and flow. Really, for our employees, we want to make sure we're monitoring, training, making sure all of our hand dispensers are actually full of soap at all times. And same thing as our visitors, right? We want to make it easy for them. And we want to make it, obvious for our associates that they need to wash their hands. So between those two, we can help mitigate those personal hygiene issues, which knocks number 3 of the top violation down. And it's going to deal with that cross-contamination issue significantly. So both of the first two and everything we talk about today is really, a lot of it revolves around training. And while it's the number 5 most cited violation, it really impacts all of them. So why is training important, right? Well, it helps improve onboarding and retention. It drives consistent operations, and it increases safety. Now, us at Ecolab, our goal, at least with our product use, is we know how challenging labor is for you. So we want to accelerate that time to competency for your employees. So your employees know what they're doing and how to do it when they're there. We want to drive more consistent results. So they know what they're doing. It's easier for them to do it, and they do it more streamlined, more frequently, mitigating risk. And then finally, for their safety, for the public safety, we want to make sure they go into their environment, they feel safe knowing what they're doing, and that environment is safe for them to work in. So that's critical to training, and it goes back to proper hand washing. It goes back to proper sanitizing a table. It all flows together, right? And really, this is a big detailed list, and I'm not going to read through all of it, but really you should have managers on site that understand all of this, right? You should have certified managers that have standard operating procedures, that you have detailed recipes, that you know what you're purchasing, what equipment you need, and how to monitor and record keep with it. So you know times and temperatures, you know how much dilution your product should use when you're disinfecting and sanitizing. You understand how to properly use them. And then you're training your employees on how to properly use them. And you've got quality control and ways to check things. And you have a goal-oriented function, right? So your goal is to get better in X or Y or Z and continue to do that. And just to remind you of those top 5 factors of foodborne illness, right? Food from unsafe sources, inadequate cooking, improper holding temperatures, contaminated equipment, poor personal hygiene. All of that is going to fall into training. So again, continuous monitoring, and maybe the most important thing about training, in my opinion, preventative rather than reactive approach. I was in pest elimination for a few years, right? And once you had an infestation in a location, it was dang hard to get rid of it. But if you could prevent it, it was much, much easier to keep things out than to get inside things to get them back out. Same thing here, right? If you've got a plan, if you've got SOPs, you can prevent things from happening, and you don't have to worry about the damage to your reputation. You don't have to worry about those sicknesses because you've got a preventative approach rather than a reactive approach. And then finally, Ecolab has thought about how we do training a lot and best practices around training. I know all of you are probably working with a lot of Gen Z, or, I guess we're getting into the even younger generation now too, but short, on-demand, device-based training we found is the most impactful. We just launched our digital on-demand training. It's basically our play with it is this. We know kids are going to have their phones. We know that they have the YouTube attention span or TikTok attention span. 2 to 3 minutes is probably too long, but we're going to do as fast as we can to get basic information about exactly how to do a task, use correct products in, out safely, and get them moving. So that's our thought behind our training. And this is something we offer to all of our customers. There's no added cost to it. But the big things we also offer with it, our managers have the ability to assign tasks to each employee. Employees can then take it, and managers can follow up on progress. They can also administer exams, which then have pass-fail basis on them. And managers can, track all of that at location level up through corporate level. So the idea being that we can make sure training is occurring. We know they're getting it in 2-3 minute chunks that they can actually retain. It's directly related to the job they're doing. It's visual and simplified. So when you do go to think about training with your staff, it's really easy to throw paper cards in front of somebody or sit somebody down in front of a computer for a few minutes at the beginning of their time with you. But we found it's great for retention, and it's much better if we can get them with their device in front of the equipment that they're going to be using, and quick short videos that they can repeat if they need to, that they can be assigned to. That's going to help drive retention, and it's going to be able to reinforce all of those good practices. So you keep your people and they do things better. So we reduce those risks and we limit those health violations. And then I talked about them, proper temperatures, number 2, and, labeling is a big one as well. We're just going to briefly go through them because I know all of you know this, but temperature is a tricky one because of the bottom right of this slide. Receiving, storing, food prep, cook, holding, cooling, storing again, reheating, hot, holding, and serving. There is a bunch of different times where something could go wrong. And how you cook and what you cook, temperature you cook to, is obviously really important. So with this, like we said before, the best thing is to be proactive, understand where your risks are and the critical control points so that you know where you need to take corrective action before there's any issues with it, right? So if you've got something faulty in the cooling, or people tend to leave a door open, or your hot holding table doesn't hold as hot as long as you'd like it to, or whatever it may be, whatever circumstance may be, know that that's your issue and do your standard operating procedures, do your training around any challenges you may have. And labeling, again, best practice, right? Something like our prep and print system where you can know exactly the ingredients in whatever you've made. Dating is critical, right? Where it's supposed to go based on the labeling. It's able to track, so you have an idea of your food waste and that sort of thing. So that's really, really important. So again, just like temperature, labeling is something I know you're all very familiar with and you're all aware of, but it's just something that, that training, that idea, that standard operating procedure, that's going to help reduce issues. So with all of that information I gave you on sanitizing, on hand washing, on temperature, everything in between, labeling, what can you actually do? Monthly kitchen walkthroughs to assess your facility, right? Making sure you have schedules for cleaning, maintenance. We talked right about that, baseline level of disinfecting and sanitizing you should be doing. Should have a baseline level, right? You know what you're supposed to be doing as you're walking through monthly. What are my issues, right? Do I have some piece of equipment down? Do I have, a hole in a wall where a pest could get through? Am I running out of a product, whatever, a cleaning product, whatever it may be, right? Making sure you understand, know your cleaning, know your maintenance schedule so that you can, maintain a healthy facility. Reinforce proper cleaning, sanitizing, and hygiene procedures with your employees. Again, I'll mention it again, but 80% is through hands. 95% of people don't wash hands, and people touch 300 surfaces every 30 minutes. So with those three numbers, if that doesn't scare you into making sure people are, maintaining proper hygiene standards, I think, hopefully that'll get through to you. Reviewing your health department, EcoSure, and pest inspections. So obviously, we have EcoSure, which is our third-party auditing service. We have pest elimination, and you obviously have health department reviews, right? What violations are consistently coming up, or what areas of opportunity for improvement are consistently coming up, and how are you going to address them, right? What training are you going to do? What things are you going to implement to make things work better? Training programs, right? What are you doing now to train people? Obviously, labor is a major challenge. We've said it a bunch of times. But what are you doing as they come into that facility? They don't know anything. Generally, they know less than workers. 5 years ago, that worker came from a different restaurant to go to yours. They had a baseline level of understanding of how things worked. Today, that person has never been in a restaurant other than to eat in their lives. They have no idea how they work. So what are you doing today to get people onboarded so they know what to do and they know what to do more quickly, right? Do you have a person in charge? Are you training, and are you training on the right topic? Do you have coaching, and do you have a way to reinforce good behaviors and practices? And then do you have support from someone like Ecolab, from your manufacturers of your equipment, to actually get the training you need? And then finally, I can't tell you how many times I walk into even our own team, right? When I go into restaurants, proper PPE, appropriate products, expiration dates, knowing how all of that works together, right? How many times have I seen someone not using PPE because they don't have it, they don't know about it? They're using a product, they're using a dish machine product to clean the floor or something, in between. It's all about making sure you're doing the right thing the right way, and reinforcing that with your staff. So that's what you can really do to make sure you can consistently get those good results. And then finally, we want to drive consumer confidence. And our goal is to help you validate and, visibly demonstrate your commitment to cleaner, safer, healthier practices. And we do something like that with our Ecolab Science Certified. So Ecolab Science Certified is a part of our EcoSure program, and it allows us to create a plan with you. We make sure that you're following up on that plan. You know that everything's clean, and then we can provide marketing and national awareness that you're getting the clean you need. So the idea behind this, right, is it's part of our third-party auditing, but it's that extra step of, we know you're buying the right products that will make sure your facility is clean at all times. We know you're applying them the correct way, and we're going to make sure everybody knows about that, so that those, that 75K loss is because of a foodborne illness outbreak, that's not going to happen at your facility. So it's just something to think about it as you go on with your home facilities. And then finally, just a few additional resources. We have our food safety monitor newsletter. So it's roughly a monthly letter. And, we at Ecolab, we have a full regulatory team and a full food safety team that are also monitoring all the data at the beginning of this presentation. So they're constantly monitoring industry trends and keeping up with it, and releasing a monthly letter. So that's free to sign up. Webinars like the one I'm doing now, we have a bunch that are recorded. So we have webinars and infographics and articles on our LinkedIn. So feel free to check those out. And then our microbial risks page. So we have a page where it provides a bunch of microbial issues and the products we can use to help solve them. So hopefully those 3 resources will be really valuable for you. And certainly your local Ecolab rep, if you use Ecolab today, can help you out with any other questions. And we can support you in any way we can as part of our partnership. So hopefully I have knocked down those 4, knowing what the food safety and public health is and how important it is, understanding those top 5 most common health department violations, how those top contributing risk factors align almost exactly. And then we've talked about those, understanding that those risks exist and how we're going to address them with proper hygiene, proper sanitizing, disinfecting, proper training, that kind of thing. So I know there's some more resources on this QR code. If you have any other questions, obviously, like I said, feel free to reach out to your Ecolab rep, or certainly I will be available for the next few minutes to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you so much for taking a few minutes with me. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Well, fabulous information. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, if you might be so kind as to try and answer some of those if you're able. Let me
Absolutely.
see. Okay. So one of the questions that came in from one of the chefs are there any specific health code challenges that you have recommendations on how to avoid when it comes to outdoor food stations or catering events outdoors? Anything that you might be able to recommend that they avoid or that they do in order to mitigate those risks?
Honestly, it's gonna align very, very well, right? So if you're going outdoors, temperature is going to be very, very important, right? So making sure your equipment works properly, that's going to be huge. And then we certainly have a lot of outdoors type products that help cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, and outdoors. So ensuring that you're working with whoever you're working with on your cleaning chemistry to ensure they have the proper products in place so that they can sanitize and disinfect those surfaces, including outdoor flooring, outdoor patios, that type of thing. So you're getting that level of clean you need. So, proper product use, proper temperature use, proper labeling, all of that's going to fall really similarly into catering, into outdoor spaces. It's all going to flow really well.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you. One of the other questions is if you might be able to offer insights on any specific measures you recommend taking to prevent cross-contamination or safe food handling practice when it comes to cleaning or in between preparing foods that have major allergens like seafood or nut dishes.
Yeah, so allergens are really difficult because we're talking about very small particles. And so we don't have any anti-allergen claims on any of our products. But what I will say is it's best we often recommend color coding, certainly with things like cutting boards or designating certain locations and stations for certain things related to allergens. Obviously, that may not always be possible with your footprint, but that's something we recommend. Other than that, right, getting a contact sanitizer that has a lot of different claims. So I mentioned before our sink and surface cleaner sanitizer. It's got 15 and 30-second claims. So quickly getting those sanitizing claims, and then also broad ranges for any of those cross-contamination pathogens. So making sure, I'm just going to sound like a broken record, proper products and then procedures about where you're prepping things, color coding. Even at my house, right, I have color-coded cutting boards to know XYZ is being cut on XYZ. Certain tools are only used for something. I know that's sometimes is a challenge, but the more you can segment and not get that cross-contamination, and the more you can use proper products in between, and products that work quickly, the better off you'll be.
Fabulous. Okay, great. And then we'll take this one as the last question. One of the chefs is wondering what advice you might be able to give to a chef who is planning to open their restaurant in a few months. They're currently in the build out. Are there any products or equipment that you recommend for a small business to maintain a compliant establishment on a budget?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I would highly suggest you do, and it's something that we find people get kind of tripped up on a lot, and we certainly at Ecolab can help you with this, but whoever you go to, get your use costs down. So there is the idea of an upfront cost versus a use cost. So I know we at Ecolab, you know, we're often considered we're on the higher end of price for a lot of different things, and we understand that. But what we like to do is, because we concentrate all of our products so much, when they get to you and we dilute them, they're going to last a lot longer. So whoever you're working with, have them break down the use cost for you so that you understand, yes, I'm paying X up front, but at the gallon level, I'm getting way more gallons out of this, and it's actually cheaper in the end. So, because lots of people get tripped up on the price overall versus, use cost price. So I think that's number one. And then number two, especially if you are working with Ecolab, have a representative come out to your facility as you're building out, and we can make sure we have room to install the equipment for you, know where the equipment's going to go, what type of equipment you're thinking about, where to put it, all of that kind of stuff, so that we do that on the front end. So you've got the space, you've got the time, you've got the locations for it on the back end. And we'll do that without, no cost to you, right? If you call an Ecolab rep out to take a look, we can look at your facility and see what you need to install and where to get proper and that kind of thing. So feel free to reach out to us and use cost. Make sure you look at use cost versus upfront cost.
Excellent advice. And then we just had one last one kind of come through that's just wondering if you had any posters or other materials. They're very, very intrigued by the touching 300 surfaces statistic. And so they didn't know if those might be available through Ecolab or that they could hang on their employee board.
So I have kind of a two-part answer to that one. We have a lot of different wall charts that you can use. So certainly reach out to any rep, or we can find a way to get whatever you want to you. We have lots of different hand washing ones and all kinds of stuff. However, that specific one is just a slide, but I don't see why we couldn't blow it up and make it a poster for you too. So the answer is we can make it work. But yeah, we have lots of different options.
Well, this has just been super informative. Thank you so much. And I'm wondering if you had any final words that you'd like to leave with the chefs and culinary instructors and food service professionals who are tuning in today.
I just, it's so, at Ecolab, we really focus on a partnership, and our goal, right, is to help you. And we really want to make sure those illnesses, those hospitalizations, those deaths, we want to try to get those down to zero, right? We want to mitigate your risk. We want to mitigate your customers' risk. And so however we at Ecolab can do to partner with you on that, that's what we want to do. So I just want to say thank you so much for giving me, 45 minutes of your time. I really appreciate it. And feel free to reach out to myself. I'm sure my contact information will get out there, or your local Ecolab rep with any questions, and we'll be able to help you.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today as well. We appreciate it. And a huge virtual round of applause as we thank Ecolab and Clint Sowle for a very informative presentation. And we appreciate all the chefs for taking the time to tune in to learn these important insights on cleaning and sanitation. Thank you for sharing this with our ACF community. For those of you tuning in, please be on the lookout for a survey that you'll receive tomorrow, which will include the recording of this session, as well as a survey that you'll need to complete in order to earn your 1 hour of ACF CEH. This recording will also be posted on the ACF Online Learning Center and the ACF YouTube channel if you'd like to share with your colleagues or your staff. And we hope that you'll join us for our next webinar on October 10th. We will learn more about contemporary tarts live from the Culinary Institute of America in collaboration with the Retail Bakers of America. And October 17th, we'll have a session on food waste. And please save the date on November 8th for a demonstration live from Mexico on cuisines of the Yucatan Peninsula. There's still time to register for the ACF Advanced Pastry Summit to be held at Johnson Wales University in Charlotte on October 20th. Please go to acfchefs.org under the events tab to register today. And for more information, for more inspiration, for culinary news, and to register for upcoming webinars, please check out our website, wearechefs.com. So again, on behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you to Ecolab, thank you to Clint for bringing us this great learning opportunity, and thank you for tuning in today. Have a great day, everyone.